Greetings, MechWarriors. This is Blackhawk SC. Recently, I did a tutorial on the Night Gyr Prime, A, and B, and I'd like to follow it up with a video about the hero variant, the Jade Kite. As usual, I'm going to skip the information that I've already covered earlier, so do check out the guide if you want to learn more about the chassis in general. I'm also trying out a software noise gate for my audio, so maybe that'll get rid of some of the background buzzing you might have noticed earlier. It does seem to cut off some words, so that's an unfortunate side effect. The Jade Kite, like the Prime, A, and B, has no CT energy hardpoints, so any build that I demoed in the standard pack guide can be used on the JK. But the JK gives us a pretty useful ERPPC quirk when using the stock omnipods, as well as the hardpoints to use that quirk. So in this video I'm going to focus on a couple of builds that are unique to this variant and uses that quirk. The first build should be pretty obvious when we look at the quirks and hardpoints. The ERPPC Gauss combo is pretty common these days, and the Jade Kite does that pretty well. The ERPPC Velocity quirk and the TC5 gives the Jade Kite a total 55% increase in ERPPC velocity. At around 2015 meters per second, the projectile speed actually exceeds the speed of an unmodified Gauss round, making it very accurate. This addresses one of the biggest issues with ERPPCs, and it was a major reason why I haven't recommended ERPPC focused builds in the past. The ERPPC works best at long ranges, but a vanilla ERPPC takes more than half a second to reach 800 meters. On unquirked builds, that makes leading ranged targets difficult, and gives enemy mechs a chance to dodge the projectile if they see it coming. Another nice thing about this build is that all the weapons are on the arms, which makes it such that you won't need to arm lock to ensure that all of your weapons hit the same component. The downsides of this build, and other similar builds like the Pop-Tart Timberwolf, is that the DPS is fairly low due to how hot the ERPPCs are. The jump jets that you use while pop-tarting also generates heat. So if the match gets to mid or close range quickly, the DPS limit will hit this sort of build pretty hard, and you might find that you can't contribute as much. The relative heat inefficiency is why I think the double Gauss single ERPPC build that I talked about in my earlier video is better overall. That's not to say the build is bad, but you do have to have the right expectations about its performance in maps or situations that are not suited for this playstyle. I go over Gauss ERPPC in more detail in my Night Gyr standard pack guide, so do check it out if you haven't done so. Another issue with this build is that the last half ton of Gauss ammo is mostly a waste. But if you play with the build, you'll see that we don't really have any other way of using the leftover half ton. One final note about this build. You'll notice that the Gauss is on the left side, and that's relatively uncommon. Most traditional Gauss builds, especially for the IS, have the Gauss on the right side, so I've personally developed the muscle memory to charge the Gauss with the right mouse button. If you're like me and you map the left and right mouse buttons to the weapons on each side, it might take some time to adjust having the Gauss mapped to the left mouse button. For me, it was maybe 7 games or so, with some training in the testing grounds. Even then, I would still occasionally slip up in the middle of the game and click the right mouse button to charge the Gauss. This has caused me to shut down in the middle of a match before, and often leads to dying. It's not an issue that's terribly difficult to overcome, but it does take some practice for some people. As for modules, I take Advanced Seismic, Radar Deprivation, Gauss Cooldown, and another weapon module. For the second module, I take the ERPPC Range, but Gauss Range or ERPPC Cooldown are also reasonable choices. Now let's go into a match and see how it feels. In this match we're on Tourmaline Desert. Tourmaline is a map where the Night Gyr's minus 100% and external heat transfer quirk is pretty useful. So it makes this map like a normal map, like River City or Crimson Straits. This match was a little bit weird because our team was, well, maybe not so weird. It kind of happens a lot in the solo queue, but our team was spread out across the map, as you can see from the mini-map here. So we're in this kind of position where we don't really quite want to be. This is a very exposed position, but the purpose is that so it doesn't matter where the match kind of converges to, we can, attempt to help wherever it ends up being. So there was some fighting going over on the right side, but more and more the fight seems to be going on the left side now. So we're gonna go take some shots over there. Here's where the range can be helpful. we're about 600, 550 away from, you know, the execution. We can start firing on it immediately.
New target acquired.
It was just it was kind of a risky move to be over that far exposed into over that position, but it worked out. That risk taking kind of worked out. As you can see, we're getting warm here, so we're using the chain fire on our ERPPCs for the best DPS that we can achieve.
Target acquired. New target acquired. Fuel at 25%.
So we're just doing a little pop tarting to get enough clearance for that shot.
Target acquired.
So we know there's a lot of mechs over on the left, on the right side of this of these ridges here. So we're gonna start pop tarting, which is helpful if you're engaging potentially multiple targets. So you're trying to minimize that face time. Certainly, if you're simply trading alphas with these mechs, typically the Gauss ERPPC builds will not win. But if you're just minimizing the face time to maybe like a fraction of a second, then it can often pay off. So here, if we're, for example, doing side peaks, if we're only limited to the side peaks, then we'd be probably facing 3 mechs at the same time. Whereas pop tarting, we're getting back to cover almost as soon as they can react to the pop, I guess you could say.
Target acquired. Fuel at 25%. Fuel at 0%.
I need to refill my jump just a little bit more there.
Target acquired.
So our height on the arm weapons was just enough to get a shot on that cataphract, the top of that cataphract, if we aim up.
Center torso critical damage. Left arm critical damage. New target acquired.
So as you can see, kind of like our damage output is throughout this match has been pretty much limited by the heat generation of our weapons. Really, and the jump jetting, as I mentioned, adds to the heat generated by this build. So this is not like a really high damage match, but you can see kind of, you know, what it's good at and what it's not as good at. I just need to finish up this Nova and we're done. So hopefully what you can see is it can kind of engage potentially multiple targets as long as you can minimize that face time with pop tarting. With the downside being, of course, DPS. The second build I'll talk about is the mixed Dhaka ERPPC build. The reasoning behind this build is to address the mid-range DPS issue on the Gauss ERPPC build while still making it a build that's unique to the Jade Kite. As a viewer in my previous video noted, Gauss ERPPC performs best at long ranges. With the teammate map being unpredictable in the public queue, mid-range loadouts will probably give you the best chance of success on average. Now back to this build. It plays very similarly to the Quad UAC5 build that I showed in the earlier Night Gyr guide, except for that the ERPPC gives you something to do at long ranges, and it's much easier to shoot down UAVs. The downside is that the overall DPS is still lower than the Quad UAC5 build, and the projectile velocity is desync. So, for moving targets, you'll often have to fire the ERPPCs and UACs separately. Overall, for leveling the Jade Kite, this is going to be the build that I recommend if you want to run something unique. A variation of this uses dual ERPPCs and dual UAC5s, but I felt that the Gauss ERPPC build is better at long range. And for mid-range, the double UACs don't seem to be worth the face time for this mech. On a mech with low available tonnage or limited ballistic hardpoints, 2 UAC5s and some lasers is a reasonable loadout, but the Night Gyr is capable of more. The modules I'd use are UX5 cooldown and ERPPC cooldown. Alright, let's get into a gameplay demo.
Line.
In this match, we're on the ever-popular Canyon network. Canyon is a long to mid-range map, usually. Sometimes it gets to close range if the fight does get kind of converges around the C4, D4 area, the center hill. Actually, that's what really happens in this match. And here we're just kind of trying to get some like kind of poke shots from like long distance, and if we hit something, great. If not, doesn't really matter. You know, we're not really trying to engage from long range. So we got a hit on the cataphract on one of those shots, but we're just gonna try to close the distance
Target acquired.
if possible,
New target
and get a shot
acquired.
on that Jaeger.
If they go
New
that
target
way towards the
acquired.
light, they're gonna run into their main group.
See a blip on
Probably
the
not gonna be
C3
a good
side, and
idea.
we'll try to check out what that
New
is.
target acquired.
And it is a Kodiak. The Kodiak seems to be running like a UAC or PPC build, which is kind of unusual and not something that you normally see. But we still want to really trade with the Kodiak 1-for-1. If we can get free shots, that's probably the best. But if we're seeing the Kodiak shoot back at us, so we don't really want to, 1v1 or trade armor with that thing.
Target
So
acquired.
since there doesn't seem to be anything to shoot at over on the left side, that's where we're still looking over at the Kodiak. But
New
he seems to be just
acquired.
randomly
Target
peeking
acquired.
out of cover, and so we're wasting our DPS, somewhat wasting our time. So we try to move to the left side over here and see what we can shoot at. And fast targets is not really our ideal target for UAC builds. So here's a Jaeger that we can shoot at, which is ideal, but
New target acquired.
we can actually 1v1 that Jaeger. We can out DPS him, but there were other things that were shooting at us. He was getting some support from behind, so we want to move out of that position, get better trades with the enemy. We do see a lot of enemies around behind that rock, so we pop a UAV to give our team a sense of where they are. Again, I don't want to that quad. I'm guessing that Sleipnir is probably something like a quad UAC build, so I don't want to trade with him by myself. Decide to move out of there.
Airstrike online. New target acquired.
It seems like some enemies came down the canyon. I think that's kind of a mistake, I think, on their part, especially for the mechs that don't have jump jets. You have this Sleipnir over here, kind of
New target acquired.
stuck, I would say, down here with without having an easy way to get back up.
Fuel at 25%.
So we're down 0-4, but some of the enemy mechs were pretty hurt, so
Online.
we were later able to come back
New
fairly
target
quickly.
acquired. New target acquired.
See, some of the mechs are still stuck down there,
New target
including the
acquired.
Jaeger mech without jump jets, and
Target destroyed.
I think that
Target
move down to the canyon really hurt them, because the only ways that some of these mechs can get back up is up the ramp, which is full of our team. So
Target
the
destroyed.
fact that they got stuck there and some of them just got hammered. Like if they didn't do that, they might have came out,
New
better.
target acquired.
With the Phoenix Hawk, I was trying to aim for the legs. If you take out the legs, it's just pretty
New
much
target
useless.
acquired.
See, I was trying to, just trying to get some shots on the legs there.
New target acquired.
So we're mostly
Target acquired.
covering.
New target
Oh, we killed that
acquired.
Phoenix Hawk. So we're mostly covering both the left and right sides. using some of our range, but mostly our DPS here to, you know, kind of do a little bit of area denial from
Right flank critical damage.
on this side. Again, aiming for the legs on the Arctic Cheetah.
Target destroyed. New target acquired. Target acquired.
I don't know what happened to that
Fuel
Kodiak.
at 25%. New target acquired. Target
With a legged Arctic
destroyed.
Cheetah, he dies. And it's 11-8, we just need to find the last guy. I think something that maybe should stand out in this match is how important the DPS factor, how that really factored into the match result. Like suppose that we didn't have as much damage, we couldn't get as much damage output, then, you know, that could have turned out much differently. Like if we were limited by heat or something like that, then we would have maybe been in more trouble, and we might not have won the match. So. Okay guys, this has been an in-depth look at the Night Gyr Jade Kite. As always, if you have questions or comments, leave them in this comment section below, and I do respond to them. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more gameplay and mech tutorials. See you on the battlefield.